Welcome to Braves Buzz on TV Kojiko, and this week, well, we're going to tell you an absolutely unique story and something, unless you're a Braves fan and aware of this occurrence, you wouldn't have dreamed of some of the things that can certainly transpire in sports. The last few episodes, we've talked about the 60s, and we're going to move along into the 70s this evening with a great old player of the Brockville Braves. I shouldn't say old, but Dave Wilson. And Dave, thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
So Dave, you came the route of the big city boy to, you're from Toronto. You played your minor hockey and everything in Toronto.
Yep. Got invited down this way to play with the Cornwall Royals back in '72, I think it was. I played with Al Sims in Toronto at Ted Reeves Arena and got a letter from the Cornwall Royals inviting us to training camp.
So that's how it all started. So you didn't necessarily come down just to play with the Braves. That ended up, but you initially came down. The Cornwall Royals by that time were in the Quebec League. They started in the it was the Montreal Junior Hockey League after leaving the Central Junior Hockey League. But just going back a step closer to that, going back to your formative days back in Toronto. Do you remember the first time you were on skates, or the first time, or where you were in Toronto? Do you remember any of those memories? I mean, that's hard to pin down, Dave, but...
Actually, I remember right back to when I started organized hockey when I was 5 years old. It was a $5 registration fee at Ted Reeves Arena.
Well, that's changed a lot.
My mother gave me $5 to pay registration, and they got me in 2 years ahead of time. The first year players were 7 years old,
right?
And I started when I was 5. I got 3 years in tyke. They called it.
They called it that time. At that time. So that was
Actually,
little. So that would have been back 50s.
Oh, I was born. Yeah, it would have been 1958.
1958 had to be my birth year.
I'm dating myself.
You're dating yourself now, for sure.
Doing the math there.
Yeah. So you say the Reeves Arena. Where was that in Toronto?
Ted Reeves Arena. It was at Main and Danforth. That was in the east end of the city, just basically north of the beaches area.
Oh, gotcha. So you were saying before the minor hockey in Toronto, and you guys had a pretty good hockey team there with some players that went on, played in the National Hockey League. There was a few. Describe who were all them, and how was that? Like, you had a pretty good team there in your late teens prior to coming this way.
Yeah, looking back now, we didn't know at the time, but we actually had one of those, here and there you get these great little teams in the world in any sport, baseball, basketball, hockey. We were a little team. We ended up with 3 NHLers on the team at the time. We had Al Sims, who was just playing in a Pape Recreation Center when they discovered him when he was 12 years old. He came out and he was throwing hip checks back when he was 12 years old. I don't know if you ever saw that hit he threw on Cornwall. But he started off doing hip checks.
Well, there's the Boston Bruin. I mean, Al Sims. And
well, he was doing hip checks back, and he was just sort of laying on the ice in front of them. And
so as early as 12 years old, he was sizing them
hip
up.
Checks. And then we had Brett Callaghan, who ended up with the Edmonton Oilers. I think maybe in the WHA. He was in the WHA, so whatever Edmonton was before they became an NHL team. He played with Gretzky.
Right, and they would have still been WHA, and if he was still, with Gretzky. I mean, Gretzky go over from the Indianapolis Racers, I believe, and then became an Oiler. So yeah, he could very well have been even part of the first Edmonton team in NHL expansion in '79. And who else?
That's myself.
Yeah. Well, see, there's another star there. There's quite a career there, Dave. And so you came this way. You weren't scouted by the Braves, or you didn't initially come this way for the Braves.
I'd never heard of Brockville.
Never heard of Brockville.
No.
Like even to this day, a lot of the kids that come into town, they hadn't heard of Brockville before that. So you were in a group of you, including Al Sims.
Yeah,
and you were heading to the Cornwall Royals, the Quebec Major Junior A.
Yeah, they sent us train tickets, and we all took the train down to Cornwall. There was Stu Davison, Paul Hurley, Smith, the goaltender, myself, Al, and of the 6 of us, 4 of us ended up making the team. that
Right.
year, signing with the team.
But you were actually, so that I see that 182 penalty minutes. So that was one side of the game, and you've said you had no problem dropping the gloves. So you brought a little bit of everything to the table, because in the two seasons, 71-72 and 72-73, you played 100 games with the Brockville Braves, 43 goals, 52 assists, 95 points. That's basically obviously almost a point a game pace. That's pretty respectable, Dave.
That's very interesting, because that is the first time I've ever heard those
That's the first time.
stats. Yeah, I've always
those are available.
thought of myself as a Wendell Clark.
You thought of yourself as
he's probably the closest player to
right.
my style of playing. I just did sort of a little bit of everything.
So, in 71-72, we'll just take a quick look at some of the names. I can't remember them all, and this will bring forward to you. I mean, Dave Dixie, and what a hockey player Dave Dixie was. Steve Keach, there's another pretty gifted guy in 71. Trenton connection. And of course, Phil Iwaskowitz, there's a character. And I believe he's from down east, right? Phil Iwaskowitz?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure.
No.
I knew he came in from Kitchener. I think
Well,
he was.
that
That's all I knew
you
about him,
knew,
really.
okay.
And he had a black Volkswagen.
He had a black Volkswagen.
Yeah.
So was that a conversation piece or a must-see?
It got us into some trouble.
It got you in a little bit of trouble.
Only because it was people knew where we were.
Yeah, a little too identifiable.
Yeah.
But Phil Iwaskowitz was the top defenseman in that league. That team, Steve Davies, there was probably one of the best diminutive goaltenders, but a great goaltender. He was the MVP of the league.
Yeah.
Imagine that, as a goaltender and top goaltender.
Yeah.
What a goalie, and I remember him very, very well as a goaltender, watching what he did. I mean, what an all-star. Of course, we mentioned Larry Salmon.
Yeah.
And Dave, you mentioned that's who we sat with in the dressing room.
Yeah, Rick's Bracklin, so we had
Rick's
tons
Bracklin,
of
Dan Culhane.
lots of speed. Dan Culhane, yeah, he's one of the toughest. We had a tough team. We were as tough as anybody out there. Dave, what's
Scotland.
his name?
I see
Dave Scotland.
Dave Scotland.
Yeah.
This must have been one of Ted Allen's last years too.
He was a year before us.
Yeah,
Him and Dave Riley and Larry Robinson were a year before us.
Yeah.
We had Bingley. Rob Bingley came down from Cornwall later in the season.
So that season, 71-72, 48 games, 24 wins, 22 losses, and 2 ties. So you're around the 500 mark, quite a bit of respectability. And with the top goaltender and the MVP, top defenseman of the league, you finished third in 71-72. You lost to the Bears. I don't know any memories there. I mean, the Bears became quite a power, the Smith Falls Bears, back in the early 70s. Other than the 72-73 Lumber Kings, the Bears had a pretty good stretch there. In fact, I think it was 74-75. They had lost the Centennial Cup in Game 7 in overtime in Nepean. So the Bears had, some pretty good players. I think you could probably remember Steve Hull.
Fournier, Stevie Hull,
Fournier.
Howard.
There was some Sean Howard.
Sean Howard went down.
What were those games like? They must have been. I mean, the Bears finished. I believe they probably won the pennant. Probably 71-72. They're a pretty good hockey team. The 72-73 season, we'll get to that. That was the Lumber King year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But this was the Bears. Pretty good stuff.
Well, I remember they went. Yeah, that's right. They went up against that team from Thunder Bay, I think, with that crazy guy who ended up doing a movie. I think Goldthorpe or something like that.
Was that right?
I went up to that game. Yeah, that was. He was a terror. He went right into the stands. I watched that playoff series. That was.
So that's just a little too much slap shot.
Oh yeah, that was that was one tough series, boy. That was. I remember going up to Smith Falls and watched that. This refreshing my memory here.
Well, yeah. In fairness, I mean, I've taken the time to dig this up, and I know you can't remember, so there must be a lot of things that come to mind that first season of Brockville.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned you come over from Cornwall, so was there any obviously there was some level of disappointment, or coming to the Braves, or was it?
Yeah, for me at the time, like I was mentioning earlier, I didn't come from one of those hockey families where, you know, they're massaging you and getting you with the young Nats or the best teams in Toronto like the Marlies or the Red Wings or anything like that. I just love to play hockey. And I was basically on my own. My dad was a cop on shift work, and I was just on my own and loved hockey. And so I just played hockey and ended up becoming a great hockey player just from pure volume.
Right.
And I sort of just, that's the way my career went. I just sort of followed hockey letters, and I didn't really think about being drafted. I just liked playing hockey. So when I came down here, I got a letter from Cornwall, so I came here, and then when I came to Brockville, it was just, actually it said Orville Tessier, play me or trade me. I'm not getting enough ice time here. Because as you get together from a large pool of players to get into that higher level of junior A.
We're going to get you to hold that thought, Dave, and we'll be right back with Dave Wilson here on Braves Buzz, and have we got a story for you.
Do you know how many people get their water from underground? Water can come from the surface or underground. Groundwater is found in the layers of soil and rock beneath our feet in saturated areas called aquifers. This water source is collected in wells and supplies about half of North America's drinking water. The problem is, the quality and safety of this underground water is directly affected by what we do on the land above it.
Psst, over here. Have you heard? TV Kojiko is now offering all your favorite community-based programs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for free!
With TV Kojiko On Demand, you can pause, fast forward, and rewind.
It's all at your fingertips. Access TV Kojiko On Demand and stay connected with your community.
I'm letting Jerry do the grocery shopping. Of course I trust him.
Making healthy choices for you and your family can be challenging. That's why the Heart and Stroke Foundation created the Health Check program. The Health Check symbol tells you a product meets nutrition guidelines for healthy eating.
You know, Lucy, I'm sure he'll be just fine. I mean, it's not that difficult to make healthy choices.
Health Check tells you it's a healthy choice.
We are back with the next great Brave, Dave Wilson. We've talked about 71, 72, and just before we left you there, Dave, you were talking about Orville Tessier, and Orville Tessier, big name in hockey. I mean, coached some of those Cornwall Royals in 71, 72 to the Memorial Cup, went on to the National Hockey League with a fair amount of success on with the Blackhawks. But you were alluding to, you were talking about Orville Tessier.
Yeah, I wasn't, you know, I just wanted to play hockey. And I guess when I look back at the defensemen they had at the time, you know, everybody, when they come from their own areas to go up to a junior A team, you know, you're the best of where you are, and then all of a sudden you're not playing power play and penalty killing and on the ice for 40 or 50 minutes a game like you're used to. To me, it was a bit of a shock. And when you look at the defensemen, I was with Ron Smith, Bob Murray, Al Sims. They all went NHL. I was just playing a regular shift. I wasn't on power play and penalty killing as such. So at a certain point there around Christmas, I was a little unhappy with my ice time, so I went up and and I'd never been coached about diplomacy or anything like that from my dad, so I just said,
had an issue.
I said, I'd like more ice time, yeah.
Right.
And a few days later, he came up and said, how'd you like to go to Brockville and play? He said, you get tons of ice time there. I said, Brockville? Where the hell is Brockville? And anyways, he showed it to me on the map, and I said, sure. And next day, Don Swain and Lyle Young were up in his Charger and driving me back to Brockville. And that's how
the Brockville
became acquainted with Brockville.
Yeah, in the spring of 72. So,
Yeah.
And then we talked about the 71, 72 season. We move along to 72, 73. This is where it does get interesting, and you know, you're looking at players, the Mulcahy, Bob McCahey, Steve McCosham, a few new names,
Yeah.
Peter
Forgot.
Edwards, Dave Henry.
Yeah, oh, those are I forgot about all those names.
Yeah. Doug McNairn, I think he was from
Morrisburg?
Yeah, Morrisburg.
They were twins, I think.
Dave Capstick was a goaltender. Dave Hess was on that team. Jeff Scott, that was Jeff's first year with the Braves in 72, 73. But yeah, so it must be bringing you back some memories and some names from the past to put beside your second and final year with the Braves. But more important than that, there's two other names on this roster that of significance, and one of which was Doug McLean, of course, of Sportsnet TV, coached the Florida Panthers to the Stanley Cup final against the Colorado, against the Colorado Avalanche. He'd been with Detroit, St. Louis, but now, of course, a personality on Sportsnet. The other figure was Neil Smith, and Neil Smith was the general manager of the New York Rangers when they won their first Stanley Cup in years in 1994. So, and you were familiar with Neil Smith.
Yeah. No, we all hung out together and partied, and just some of those names. Steve McCosho. That's when I became aware of a bottomless plate of food.
Yeah, and Steve McCosho also in the off season went on and played lacrosse.
Yeah.
And a pretty strong, structured individual, Steve.
Well, I found out why. There was that bottomless plate of food. When I was from in Toronto, we were the poor end of Toronto.
Right.
We'd get a plate of food, and we ate it, or we didn't eat till the next meal.
Right.
And it was one plate.
Right.
Well, I went to him with his to his farm, and stayed with him overnight there. We were partying and everything like that. In the morning, his mother came out with breakfast. She had toast on one plate, eggs on another, and bacon on another, like a buffet style. And she just kept serving food till we couldn't eat anymore.
So that was
I learned how he got to be 5'10", 210 pounds.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Yeah. So that season, 72, 73, and actually that was also the last year they were known as the Brockville Braves. There was ownership from Philadelphia come in, and the Braves changed to Warriors, and those are the sweaters, the maple leaf kind of sweaters. So a lot of things were going on in the wind that year, and 55 games, 26 wins, 27 losses, 2 ties. Once again, you guys were around the 500 mark both seasons, so respectability. And then I guess it comes close to playoff time, and that's where we get into a unique circumstances, a unique occurrence in sports. There is the infamous day in Smith Falls, but as you alluded to, one of the things that was becoming very clear in the 72-73 season was Mac McLean's superpower, the Pembroke Lumber Kings. And as the season unwound, obviously no organization wanted to play the Pembroke Lumber Kings in the first round. Obviously it was going to be 4 games in shot. That affects your bottom line and your gate and everything. The playoff structure, definitely some shortcomings with it, Dave. First and third, and second and fourth, not what is adopted today generally, whatever. There was a lot of problems with that, and there was a big problem with that.
We probably had that format eliminated.
We probably, yes, and you guys, as we get closer to this story, certainly played a significant role in having that abolished, because it did have certain problems. I mean, when you finish first, you deserve something for that, and normally you would play the last seed, and that's the way, you should get something for it. But first and third, it created a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, and who was going to play, because it's third and fourth, who is going to have to play Pembroke first round? So leading up to this event in the spring of 73 in Smith Falls, you had a number of games, and you said even in the Pembroke Arena, there was a few games where you guys had to kind of, winning wasn't going to be the order at the time, was it?
No.
It's unfortunate, the integrity
well, you see
of
that
sport,
in all sorts of
but
sports.
it's about, it's there, It's about getting an edge. It's about a lot of things. But
money and advancing in the playoffs.
yeah, so there was a few games leading up to this notorious event that weren't played probably the way they should have been, Dave.
I remember 2 games specifically. One in Hull, and Hull was in the league at that time, and one in Pembroke where we were actually, that was Mac's claim to fame, 40 games without a loss, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it was easy, we played we had bad goaltending in 2 of those games, and we lost. And it was that easy because the other team was trying to win. For whatever reason, they were. I think it was 4 out of 8 teams.
That was the norm procedure. Yeah.
I think 4 out of 8 teams made the playoffs that year. I think that's what it was, and so it ended up that we'd lost a few without anybody noticing, and that's low key, I guess. But then in the final game.
So now we've reached the pinnacle here, and this is the storyline, the game in Smith Falls.
Yeah, we were a point apart going into the final game of the season. So whoever won the game would be in 3rd place, would play the Pembroke Lumber Kings, who'd gone 40 games without a loss. And statistically, it's hard to beat a team that's gone 40 games without a loss.
You were going to have 2 home games, and that was it.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we actually had them on the ropes in Pembroke, the 3rd last game of the season. I think it was something like that, but it was easy to lose with some bad goaltending in the 3rd. So that worked out great, but this game was different.
But here's the problem. You go into 2 teams go into a hockey game, and the beneficiary is going to be the team that loses the game.
Yep.
And that was the format and a major problem waiting to happen. And I guess it certainly did. No coaches showed up on either team.
No.
Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. So take it from there. What transpired there? Because apparently intentionally scoring on your own net is kind of taboo.
It's different. Yeah, we went out, and I was actually the captain of the Braves that year, and we went out, and the game just sort of went along, moseying along, and then through about 2 periods, Smith Falls ended up about 3-0.
They were up 3-0.
They ended up about 3-0. I'd say going towards the end of.
You guys are happy with that?
Oh, we're right where we wanted to be. Yeah, that was exactly where we wanted to be. Well, then we went into, and I don't know whether it was the end of the 2nd or the 3rd, but all of a sudden we had a player or 2, and I won't even mention a name here, but actually we were starting to shoot wide on the net, and their defense were letting us get around them, and we knew that anything that
it was really
hit the net, it was deteriorating. Anything that hit the net could go in. So they were letting us get around them, and then we were just continuing on behind their net type of thing. That was the first part of the deterioration. And then all of a sudden, one of our players took it upon themselves to get 2 easy points. So we had to sit him down and have a chat with him and say, that's not what we're trying to accomplish here. There's no time to be trying to get points.
Yes.
So we all pulled the public peer pressure thing on him there, and so straighten that out. And then the game was winding down. Nobody was taking shots on net. Everybody was shooting wide or just moseying around with the puck and not shooting on net. And then getting down to about the 5-minute mark or 7-minute mark in the 3rd, they realized that if we weren't going to take a shot on their net, we weren't going to score. So Mike DeFalco, who he was with Smith Falls, he ended up down in Concordia on the junior varsity team. He was a right shot on the left wing. Well, he was going down his wing, and all of a sudden, and if you know Mike, he's a bit crazy, which I got to know in university. He turned around and did a U-ey and ripped down his own wing and took a slap shot on his own net. And the goalie was just leaning on the crossbar with his stick, sort of like this.
Boy.
And Mike picked the top corner of the net, and it was 3-3.
Oh, and then it was all of a sudden it's 3-3.
So then all of a sudden
Smith Falls scored in their own net
they
first.
scored in their own net to tie
now
it
we
up.
got a real problem. 3-3, and the loser The winner's in trouble here.
So the whole strategy of the game changed.
Yes.
We knew with the drop of the puck that the strategy had changed. The idea was to now score on our own net.
Quickly score as many
Because
on
we
your
were
own
up,
net
because I think
as
we were up
possible.
1 point on them in the standings. So we would have had to lose. A tie was no good for us. So we had to lose. So the objective then, as we discussed quickly, was to get the draw and go to our net and score. Well, they, off the face-off, came around and blocked us from getting to our net. Our guys went around and blocked them from getting to their net. And the whole game became a switch of ends. We were trying to score on our net. They were trying to score on theirs. And it only lasted maybe 2 minutes or something like that.
So there's 2 drastic minutes late in the game in Smith Falls.
It was just chaos. Like people blocking shots going at the other team's net.
Have you ever seen anything like that before?
No, it was the weirdest thing I ever seen, blocking shots going to my,
On your own.
to their net. Double leg slide. And so then the ref just raised his hand, he blew the whistle and called the game with about 5 minutes left in the game.
And I guess as he should have. I mean, it ends up being a travesty.
A fiasco.
Fiasco. Travesty, the integrity of the game all affected. But this thing could have been avoided, and maybe you did a great thing for hockey by obliterating that 1-3 and 2-4 setup. So, Dave, thanks so much for telling this, and again, a unique story. And there's lots of over the course of we've approached 50 years of Brave hockey or Bears hockey. I mean, there's lots of good moments, and there's things that happen that we all know might not be the right thing to do at the time, but it is what it is, and it's sports and people looking for edges. But thanks for taking the time to tell us about one of the times where Brockville again made it to national media. Isn't that maybe necessarily the right way, but it was what it was. And thank you very much, Dave, and thank you for watching Braves Buzz on TV Cogeco.